Hello and welcome once again to A River Between Chaos and Zen, the poetry podcast from Creative Actors Lab. My name is Max, and Kelly, as always, sends her love. I'm a little nervous to do this one, actually, of all things. So I'll say this. I've told the story before about my speech impediment growing up. But once I finally got over that and I got into school and I started studying acting, I loved voice class. I just loved voice class. I felt so empowered. I felt because it was like, oh, I can be good at this, which was not a feeling I had had about myself in general. But a lot of people actually found voice class to be rather intimidating, felt very self-conscious. I once actually heard somebody say that the whole idea of standing on stage and speaking with a big voice or having to sing or whatever they felt very vulnerable because you would have to be in front of an audience or a camera or whatever, but particularly an audience. And you would be speaking in such a way that the audience could see the back of your throat or your tonsils or your uvula and how vulnerable they felt. It was almost as if they were exposing another part of their body. But they actually found the idea of exposing the back of their throat to amplify their vulnerability. And the other thing that a lot of people back then found, and still do, find very intimidating, unless you're a weirdo like me and you love it, Shakespeare. And we had to do some Shakespeare, and everybody, back in school, and there were some people who really found that really quite painful and would just stress and agonize over this. And, the voice is like any other muscle, and it's like any other athletic pursuit, and this using your voice can be very athletic, except you're using very, very fine musculature, in that you really have to practice. You really, if you're an athlete, you have to swim your laps, run your laps, lift your weights. If you're a dancer, you've got to do your bar exercises, you've got to do your splits, you've got to practice your combinations. If you're anything, martial artists have got to practice their strikes and their kicks and their forms and their blocks and parries and so forth. And as it is for actors when it comes to voice, and singers when it comes to voice, this is work and it's constant practice. And better you find the joy in it than the drudgery or the anxiety of it. Better to find the joy of it. And it's always, for me, it's always been better, I think, anytime that I've ever had to use my voice, that whatever mistakes I make, that I find the humor in it. Because I can be, not as bad as I used to be, but I can be incredibly self-critical and not particularly kind to myself. And as I am getting older, I am getting better at that, but, not completely there. But if you've ever had me as an acting teacher, for even the slightest bit of time, you all know about the pencil trick. Okay, and this is an old thing. This was like radio announcers used to use this, but basically, and I've heard actually people who are voice coaches for metal vocalists do this. It's the sort of a thing. And if you've been one of my students at any point, guess what? Here we go again. You take a pencil. You put the pencil in your teeth towards the front of your mouth, and you visualize the words going over the top of the pencil. And this does a lot of things. But it just activates all of the mechanisms that make sound come out of your face, and it wakes up a lot of the very fine musculature that will help to put agility into your vocals. And one thing that we would get told to do, and very few people did it, and I was not as disciplined with this as I maybe kind of should have ought to been, but to go to Shakespeare and go to the sonnets, and rather than trying to learn a Shakespearean monologue of which you've got to kind of like learn the whole play and the circumstance and how your character fits in with the other characters, which is a whole other thing. But just the sonnets are just a very beautiful thing, and but they can be particularly challenging. And even for all of this, I wanted to just talk about this, but I'm actually I'm a bit nervous to do this. But I remember I was watching some talk show, and Dame Judi Dench was on, and they said, "Judy, could you do some Shakespeare for us?" And she's like, "Oh, all right, I guess I." And she did this one sonnet, and it's gorgeous. And you can picture Dame Judy doing this, but when in the chronicle of wasted time I see descriptions of the fairest wights, and beauty making beautiful old rhyme in praise of ladies dead and lovely knights, then in the blazon of sweet beauty's best, of hand, of foot, of lip, of eye, of brow, I see their antique pen would have expressed even such a beauty as you master now. So all their praises are but prophecies of this our time, all you prefiguring, and they looked, but with divining eyes, they had not skill enough your worth to sing, for we, which now behold these present days, had eyes to wonder, but lack tongues to praise. And it would go sort of like this: when in the chronicle of wasted time I see descriptions of the fairest wights, and beauty making beautiful old rhyme in praise of ladies dead and lovely knights, then in the blazon of sweet beauty's best, of hand, of foot, of lip, of eye, of brow, I see their antique pen would have expressed even such a beauty as you master now. So all their praises are but prophecies of this our time, all you prefiguring, and for they looked but with divining eyes, had not skill enough your worth to sing, for we, which now behold these present days, had eyes to wonder, but lack tongues to praise. And the thing about it is, it's kind of like if you're a runner, or and I know this happens in martial arts quite a bit, is that they'll put weights on your feet, or they'll put weights on your wrists, and have you go out and run your laps or practice your forms or whatever. And it's so difficult. And it's so, you just feel like it's just falling all over yourself, and you can't wait to get the damn thing over with and all of this. But once you take out this obstruction and then you go to speak, all of a sudden you start to notice your diction becomes so much clearer, your elocution becomes better, you breathe better, and and that was one of the things I think I always loved about going to voice class was basically if you're not breathing properly, then you're not speaking properly. And it becomes a thing when you're going to be on stage for a couple hours, or when you're going to be on a movie set repeating the same dialogue for take after take after take. And it becomes a thing. It becomes a real arduous task to walk around or just to speak with this impediment in your mouth, and then once it goes away, oh, it just got so much easier. I had heard a teacher, not a theater, but I had heard a teacher say, when you know someone's going to go into a stressful situation, the way that you prepare them for that is, okay, let's say they're going to walk into a room and it's going to be 100 degrees. If you want to prepare them for that 100 degrees, in your preparation, you put them in a room that's 120 degrees. And then once they get out of that 120 degree room, and then it comes time for them to go through whatever their trials and tribulations are in the room that is 100 degrees, it's still hot, but it's not as hot, and it's not as difficult, and all the stuff that you thought was going to be so difficult, you go, oh, I got this. I can do this, because if I can do the other thing, if I can do the thing that had more pressure and more obstacles, if I can do that, then this other thing that I have to do that does not have all these obstacles, oh, it's tough, but I got it. And I always really, it's not the easiest thing to do sometimes, especially when you're a teacher and you know that a student really, if they're going to do what they need to do, you have to put those obstacles, you have to put those weights in front of them, and let them figure their way out of it. But if you've ever been one of my students, there's a lot of method to the madness. But if I may, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do not shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines by chance of nature's changing course untrimmed. But the eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. But what was really intimidating, and having to do this in front of a bunch of fellow students, even though we're all in the same boat, and everybody was going to basically go through the same trial, tribulation, and potential humiliation. The idea was that you would take the sonnets and out of bloody nowhere, blindly just flip to a page, close the eyes, open the eyes, put your finger on a page, and do a sonnet. And I have never read this one out loud. There's a whole bunch of these I've never read out loud, so that's not too difficult. But just to pick a sonnet out of nowhere. And here comes the pencil. So am I as the rich, whose blessed key can bring him to his sweet uplocked treasure, the which he will not every hour survey, for blunting the fine point of seldom pleasure. Therefore are feasts so solemn and so rare, since seldom coming in the long year set, like stones of worth they thinly placed are, or kept in jewels in the carcanet. I have no idea what a carcanet is. So it is time that keeps you as my chest, or as the wardrobe which the robe doth hide, to make some special instant special blessed, by new unfolding his imprisoned pride. Blessed are you, whose worthiness gives scope, being bad to triumph, being lacked to hope. And my jaw just got a workout. Thank you guys so much for listening. May the long time sunshine upon you, all love surrounds you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. Until next time.